There we go. All right. So I want to talk about objections really quick because a lot of times there was like a survey done by the Direct Selling Alliance, and they said, what's the number one reason why you don't follow up with your customers? And the number one reason is that people are afraid they're going to complain. And I remember hearing that statistic. And I was like, really? And the trainer that was training said, you know what, if you reach out to your customers and they have a complaint, thank your lucky stars, because you have every opportunity to rise to be the best consultant they've ever dealt with. And I was like, I heard that probably, I don't know, maybe even before I was in Tupperware. And I was just like, wow, she just like totally turned that on its head for me. And I was just like, okay, so whenever I think about following up with customers, or maybe somebody leaves you a voicemail and they sound like they're a little angry, I thank my lucky stars and I reach out to them to see what I can do to make me rise in their eyes as being the best consultant that they've ever dealt with, right? So overcoming objections is kind of hand in hand with that, because a lot of times what people do is they don't try and overcome objections, right? Because they're afraid of being rejected. And so they kind of pull back on that. And so I want to encourage you, when it comes to objections, thank your lucky stars when somebody objects to you, because one, it's going to give you practice and you're going to become the best, the smoothest person overcoming objections. But the other thing is if they're objecting, they're starting the conversation, right? So think about, a lot of times salespeople are just like, oh, when somebody comes at them with a price, they're like, oh, that was just the opening offer, right? So think about it that way. That is their opening offer. They're opening this conversation. They're not just saying, no, I'm not doing that, right? They're like, well, I can't right now because blah, 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 right? A lot of times there's some sort of a reason. They don't just say no. And the ones that just flat out say no, I'm like, hey, I get it. Sometimes they put up that vibe and you're just like, oh, okay, we're good. Maybe I don't want to party with you either. They're a little grumpy, right? So don't be afraid to try to overcome people's objections. So in the chat, really quick, put a couple objections that you get on a regular basis. And while that's kind of going on, one of the things that I want to talk to you about is when it comes to, so this overcoming objections, it's kind of a formula, right? And it's, if I could, would you, right? And so it's, if I could blank, would you blank, right? And so, so when it comes to dating parties, because right now we're trying to date parties, right? Because we got to beat other companies. I'm not naming names, I'm just saying. So when it comes to dating, when somebody gives you an objection, like their objection is maybe like, oh, you know what? I've done those Facebook parties and I'm never successful, right? I've done those parties and nobody ever orders. And so you're overcoming that could easily be, if I could show you what all of my most successful hosts are doing, would you be interested in giving it one more shot? Right? And a lot of times when I say that, people are like, okay, they think about it for a minute and they're just like, okay, because a lot of times that is the thing. That's the true objection. They're not, sometimes people are kind of like throwing an objection at you because they don't want to do it. And the real reason they don't want to do it, they don't want to share. And so there's a lot of things behind objections, right? There's a lot of weird mental stuff going on behind objections. Sometimes people, the objection they give you is masking something bigger that's going on. And when it comes to recruiting, that happens, right? So let's see here, too expensive. It's not my thing. I don't have that many friends or family to invite. So I asked somebody to join, she says she doesn't have any money to buy. Okay, so these are just kind of some of it, and these are definitely, I like to buy, just don't invite me to a party. No one ever buys at my parties. And that one happens a lot, which is exactly why I just kind of talked about that with the Facebook party. And so something along those lines when it comes to money, as far as they don't, people don't buy, that type of stuff. Again, an easy overcoming of that is, if I could show you how we can partner together to make the most of this party, would you be interested? A lot of times they just want to know they're supported when it comes to dating parties. Now, when it comes to the business, right? There weren't a ton of objections there for the business. It's not my thing. And so that one, it would be a little bit more questioning because that's super vague. So it would just kind of be like, what about it's not your thing, right? And then as they elaborate, then you might be able to find that if I could, would you, right? And so I had parties years ago and I'm not doing them again, no friends. I hear the no friends one a lot, actually. People are like, I don't have friends, or sometimes people are like, I don't like people. And I'm just like, I don't think so. You're talking to me right now. And if you didn't like people, you would be talking to me, right? And so I try to be funny about things like that when somebody's kind of giving back sort of almost like an objection that's a little bit of an attitude, right? And they're just being kind of silly and funny about it. But when it comes to business objections, right? So when it comes to business objections, a lot of times you're like, I don't have time. I don't know how to, right? I don't have the money, right? And so it's, if I could show you a way to get started for minimal cost, would you be interested in learning more, right? I'm too busy. If I could show you a way to work this business in and around all of your family and work obligations, would you want some more information? Would you be interested in hearing what I have to say, right? And so it's really important to just kind of like just think about that framework. And so if you do need to ask a couple more questions to get to the if I would you, if I, then you, if you have to ask a couple more questions to get there, you're always looking for that if I could, right? And so once you get to the if I could, the would you is a lot of times the same when it comes to a party. You're usually your would you is, would you be interested in hosting? Would you be interested in that theme? If somebody's just like, I don't know, and just be like, it sounds like kind of her objection is super vague, and you could be like, well, if I could tell you about some of these really cool theme parties we have that might make your friends excited about coming, would you be interested in that? And people are like, oh, and so, so a lot of times the would you is the same. So for recruiting, the would you is, would you be interested in hearing more? Would you be interested in looking at this video? Would you be interested in me sending you some information? Would you be interested in following and talking with me and my upline? Would you, a lot of times those are the same. And so the big thing is it's all about practice. And so honestly, I'm kind of a flashcard girl. Not a lot of people know this about me, but I do like a good flashcard. Okay. And so you can put objections on a flashcard and you either flip them over or have somebody in your family flip them over, right? Especially for little ones during the flashcard phase, which goes on for like, I don't know, 5 years. What is that about? Okay. Isn't there an app for this? Okay. So if you have kids in the flashcard phase, right? And they would get a kick out of giving you flashcards, right? Where you're overcoming these objections and you'll just practice and practice and practice. I used to do it in the car, in the mirror on the way to parties. I do like affirmations and I'd be thinking about all the amazing people, all the people I'm going to date in my date book and all this other stuff. But I also would overcome objections in my head. Terry said, I have actually done something that goes to the current party. My host had one set up at the party, supposedly never happened. Her host reached out to her at a vendor event complaining and talked to her and to help her get her party rolling. She's over $500. Exactly. A lot of times people, when they're just like, nobody ever shows up at those parties for me, nobody does that. A lot of times it's not their fault. It's the consultant that's helping them might not be doing quite as much host coaching as they could be doing. They might not be quite as engaged in that party as they could be. And the good news is you have all the answers to those problems because you are actively looking for parties. So clearly you're going to be engaged in that party and clearly you're going to be making the most of it and working and partnering with your host, right? So, so that's good news too, right? So I encourage you, I hope that this helps you. I know it's super simple, but I'm telling you, so many of the best things in this business are just truly this simple. And we have a tendency to complicate it, looking for something elaborate, thinking that it must be something elaborate to have that success, when really it's the little things. And it's as simple as, if I could, ... would you, ... All right, back to you, Pam.